Hey, are you just like me, constantly searching for answers outside of yourself? But what if I told you that the clarity you're looking for is within you? My next guest, Mahek Lakhani, is helping people reconnect through lunar cycles, journaling, and intentional living. So let's get into this conversation, shall we? Mahek, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Passion Projects. It's lovely to meet you.
Excited to be here.
I'd love to get things started by understanding your love for spirituality and like where that passion came from for you.
Yeah, actually, it's really funny. I think it definitely began when I was younger. So I grew up in this very small religious community. It's a Muslim religious community, but you've probably never heard of it. Most people don't know it. It's called Ismaili, and it's a very spiritual community. I feel like in the way that I sort of grew up, we're very like um, open about all different types of religions and even our own. What's really encouraged is finding your own truth and finding something that really resonates with you. So it's something that I sort of grew up in. And then when I was younger, I was very involved in all of that. At the age of like 12, started helping out with the religious education center there and did that for like 10 years. So even though I started off really young, by the time I was like 18, 19, I was like coming up with lesson plans and all of these things. So I always sort of like had that drive. And then maybe around that age, I wanted to sort of also discover what was out, like what else was out there. So I started
Mhm.
learning about all different religions and then took a break from it all. I feel like I really stepped away from it and just discovered who I am, and then in 2020 sort of had my like spiritual awakening. I know people say that word, but like an awakening of like, our spiritual nature, and then created this whole like new sort of definition that was really, defined by my own learnings and my own experiences and things like that. So it's been a lifelong sort of thing.
I absolutely love that. Yeah. I mean, like it's interesting how the pandemic kind of changed a lot of our visions and takes on life in general. And so that's great that you were able to rediscover that. A lot of people today are discovering lunar rituals through social media, but for you, it was a part of your upbringing. How has that perspective kind of influenced the way in which you approach the work that you do?
Yeah. So, it's really funny. Again, like growing up, Ismaili, one thing that we always did and still have is a ceremony, a specific prayer that we do on nights of the new moon.
Mhm.
And so, and the Islamic calendar, it is very lunar based. So many different calendars. The Chinese calendar is lunar based. So many different cultures and religions that have ancient sort of wisdom and history weaved in, use the lunar calendar. So I feel like we've all sort of know the meanings behind it. So through that, I always thought, there was something special about it. And then I don't know, I feel like I don't as girls sometimes, or just as people, like I would always feel like the moon was following me, and I just had this like, connection with the moon. And so I had that as a young girl. And then growing up and really diving into astrology 4 or 5 years ago, learned sort of the significance of it through the astrological perspective. And that added a different layer of things. And I was like, this is just, it's not something that, is just there. It's something that really impacts us in our
Mhm.
everyday life. And when we sort of work with the energies, um, it expands your awareness. Sometimes I've noticed with myself too, like at first it was kind of like, what's going on today? Like, why is this coming up or whatever else? And then would look at, oh, we've got this full moon coming up. And usually full moons are really time where things come to light and there's a little bit more added drama in our everyday lives. So then started to notice just these patterns. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. I'll I'll pin that for later.
Yeah.
Because I don't I guess I come into things very skeptical, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to like believe in things, necessarily. But over time, then you just start to notice these patterns, and not just within yourself, but like outside, you just start noticing uh,
Mhm.
how certain things are happening around certain timelines. And so then it just makes you go, okay, well, there has to be something more here. And so that's sort of where and now the way that I use it, like I've started this practice of moon journaling.
Yeah.
Um, 3-4 years ago, I was in this like really long, very deep astrology course. And the teacher, she used the term moon journaling like once in a class. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to start doing that. So I was like, okay, every new moon, every full moon, you'd see all of these posts like, oh, this is what this new moon means and full moon means. And everyone's got these different, like, you should do this ritual and you should think about this. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a very systematic person. So I was like, I got a blank journal and I started journaling every new moon and full moon. And then because I did this like 3-4 years, like over time, I created sort of like a system that made sense with the energies and the themes that were there, and the energies of that specific full moon or that specific new moon. And then like over time, it was just so cool because I'd like look back and like, whoa, that was happening 3 years ago. And oh, I wrote this thing down and like now I'm living it. And you know what I mean? So it just became such a interesting and really cool practice. And I could not shut up about it. So I would tell everyone, I would talk about it on Instagram. I had a Substack for, and I was doing these new moon and full moon readings. So I would break down what the energies were. And then I started hosting circles at my house around it. So it just sort of,
Amazing.
snowballed from there. But
That's amazing. And it's like, would you say it's kind of like manifestation in that sense as well? When you talk about energies, it's like when people talk about, Mercury retrograde and like the shift in how a certain kind of energy is kind of
affecting us.
yeah, affecting us. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I really love it because as someone who's like read all of the manifestation books and like has done all of the programs and all of the things out there,
Mhm.
I feel like manifestation sometimes the way that it's explained and the way that people talk about it, it misses a few key
Mhm.
things. And
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of times in manifestation, people really focus in on, okay, what is it that you want to create? And getting focused on that and writing it down or creating a vision board and scripting it. And that 100% is part of manifesting and creating. But I feel like there are other parts of it too that are needed, and that where I see like typical manifestation sort of doesn't have. And one of that is like shadow work. So if you are writing this thing and you're like, I really want this, let's say you really want a certain income level. Everyone wants more money or love, and you don't have it right now. Obviously, there is something in the way that
Mhm.
manifestation works. You become an energetic match to that desire. But if you're not already an energetic match to that desire, then there's something within your energetic field that's blocking it. And so shadow work is really like going within and thinking about those blocks and releasing those blocks. And so one thing that I really love about full moons and new moons is that new moons are a manifestation portal. They are a time to think about what you want to manifest. But
Mhm.
full moons are a time to do the shadow work. It's time to see like what patterns are coming up. What's triggering me? Because around that time, sometimes we can experience a lot more things that are triggering us. And rather than going outwards and being like, well, it's because of that and that and that, we
Mhm.
take that and go inward. Well, what inside of me was getting triggered by that? So it's this interplay that allows you then to not only call in what you desire, but release the blocks that are in the way of receiving it. And there's actually this quote by Rumi that I love, and it says, your like your goal or purpose is not to attract love, but to remove the blocks that are stopping you from receiving it, something along
Mhm.
those lines. And that's where I think it's really important to focus in on like removing those blocks, because otherwise you would have it and otherwise they would be in your life. And the only reason that there isn't is because there's some sort of block there. Um, and so that's why I also fell in love with new moon and full moons and journaling with it, because it allowed you to play with both of those sort of yin and yang energies.
That's so fascinating and so interesting too, because I've also heard that during new moons and full moons, also kind of trying to keep up with what you're eating and what you're consuming too, because that can also help with the energy shift as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because anything that you put in, your body is really the energetic signature that you put out, not just emotionally, but physically too. And everything that we eat, like everything is energy. So even things that you're eating have a
Yeah.
certain vibration. So absolutely.
You've mentioned the moment during your gatherings at home when you realized that this practice is needed and needed to go exist beyond you. What has happened in that moment for you?
Yeah. So it's funny. I had this blank journal and I was moon journaling for 3.5 years. And I would just have this baby thought in my head of, oh, why don't you create this journal? And the
Mhm.
reason that I even had that thought was because anytime I would walk into bookstores, indie bookstores, yoga shops, psychic stores, like metaphysical stores, I would look for some sort of journal that like had this framework so I could just easily fill it out. But nothing existed. Obviously, I looked online and Instagram and TikTok, like found nothing.
Yeah.
And all this time went by, and I know I never really took that thought very seriously because it wasn't something that like I saw myself creating or doing. But when I had that very first circle at my house, it was a Taurus new moon. And it's really funny that, looking back, you think about it in hindsight, like, of course that matches. And why I say that is because that new moon is it's happening in my 10th house, which is house of career. So it's a new
Mm.
seed. And you can see that quite literally play out because I came out of that. And, that was the first time that I had that circle. And I came out of that circle being like, wow, like I was literally sitting down that night doing my journaling practice. I was like, why don't I create it? It's something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I was a designer for 3 years. I know how to work, professional design programs, and I work in marketing. So I know how to, put things out and message it and put it out into the world. So maybe I am equipped. Maybe I do know enough to create this thing. And I'm clearly so passionate about it. And
Exactly.
sharing that and having that experience with those girls, I was like, maybe people would care about it. So then yeah, so then I went on that journey of writing it and editing it and publishing it and all that sort of thing for like a whole year. And it was just really, really, magical kind of when you look at it from today's perspective.
Yeah, what was that journey like for you when you were building it out? Were you just thinking about it that, I want to, of course, design it to really make it how you perceive it would be, and then to see it in fruition, and
Yeah.
then to see the physical copy of that journal,
Yeah.
how does that make you feel?
I mean, so proud and just so excited.
Yeah.
Writing and going through that process, it was really interesting, and it was really, I can be very detail oriented sometimes
Mhm.
and hyper fixated. So I would literally spend so like too many hours editing every single weekend and every evening. And even if I wasn't editing the actual content, I was designing and redesigning and trying to make things better. And throughout the process too, it was really important to me that anyone who doesn't even know anything about astrology and anything about the significance of this or that, but they're interested in it and they picked it up or they're pulled by it, they can pick it up and they can understand it in a very simple and easy way, and they can start this ritual and this practice. And so it was important then to me to get other people's perspective and their feedback. So I, of course, sent it out to all of my friends and I was like, can you please read this 250-page PDF and give me your feedback?
Yeah.
Um, but also through, through my job, I was really lucky. I connected with people at work. At my company, there is the copy director, and he has published like 150 children's books, for example, and he's a very great author. And so, I got his feedback throughout it, and just throughout the process, that was really great. And then, of course, creating it was a whole different part of it too. There were definitely some roadblocks. I had a specific vision on how I wanted it to look, and
Yeah.
bringing that to life, going through and finding different manufacturers and sampling and going back and forth, because of course it takes time for it to be produced and then for it to be shipped and for you to get it. And then you look at it and you're like, wait, this is not what I wanted at all. And so you go through the revision process. And I really thought, maybe I was definitely naive. I thought it was going to be like, oh, like, this is what I want. Like, you can just do that, right? It should be
Exactly.
simple. There's
Exactly.
millions of books out in the world. But I think I was a little naive in that. So it was a learning process. And I think, all of that definitely pushed some of my naive timelines a little bit. But at the end, I was definitely really, really proud of it and just excited.
Yeah. What has the reception been like? Have you been able to get feedback from those who are journaling and using the moon journal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it's so fun and interesting. What one thing that I really wanted to do in this launch of it was not just sell it online, but also be in person and at markets. So I live here in Fort Lauderdale, as you do in South Florida. And what's really great about the community here is that there's so many in-person events for specifically for women. And a lot of these communities have women that are either very ambitious, or they're
Mhm.
spiritual, or they're self-aware, or they're just committed to growth in whatever way it looks like. So I wanted to really be face to face with these people and talk about this product and show it, and but also like get their feedback and see
Yeah.
what they thought of it. And so it's been really great. I've done a couple of markets here, and just the reception's been really good, and I'm just like, okay, let's do more of this. I love it.
I absolutely love it. I think it's so great that you're able to go out into the community and like, really especially work with women. I think that's so huge and so impactful as well. Why do you think humans feel so connected to rhythms of nature, even in this world that is moving so fast?
Yeah. I mean, we live now in such a digital world where everything, I feel like, is sometimes our realities can really be created by
Mhm.
what's on social media and what's on the internet, that I feel like then it makes people really feel that disconnection to nature and to themselves. Because I mean, I feel like we really are innately very connected to nature. And when you don't have that um, connection, you can feel like something's really missing. And not only that, but also it provides a really good sense of grounding, I think. And for me personally, understanding rhythms and understanding like what's happening cosmically sometimes gives a level of self assurance that you can't find elsewhere. Especially, I feel like we're in such an interesting time where a lot of young women are single and they're not in relationships, and people are not dating as easily and getting married as easily, things that
Mhm.
would have probably happened a lot sooner, in previous times and previous decades. And it's because we're focusing on ourselves and we're growing and we're sort of going through this like awakening sort of time period. I'll speak for myself too. Sometimes it creates longing for things that feel like they're not coming in on time, and like, why isn't it happening, and why isn't
Yeah.
it coming, and it makes you feel really it can make you feel a lot of self-doubt. And so understanding timings and understanding things from a larger perspective, it makes you feel a lot more connected to the larger story, I guess, that's kind of
Yeah.
unfolding like universally, but also personally on the soul level. because I think to myself too, there are so many things that I know my soul is here to experience and grow, and it really needs to, and it learns and it does that through duality. It learns that through sometimes lack of having certain things and certain experiences. So to me, being connected to nature and being and having an understanding of cosmic timing, like gives you that self assuredness of like, okay, this is my path, and this is what I'm meant to be doing. And rather than feeling self doubt about it, feeling a level of confidence that really comes from inside rather than from external sort of ways.
Why do you think people might have a hard time when it comes to looking inside? We are so um, oblivious to the fact that everything around us, everything needs to be perfect, everything needs to be a certain way. But like a lot of times we forget, like it's everything is within us, and to bring that to the center is
Yeah.
sometimes
Hard.
a struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, so I was at a market a couple weekends ago, and this girl, we were talking about the journal, and she goes, "Oh, well, I don't want to look inside." And she was talking about herself, and she's like, "I don't want to self-reflect because I'm scared, and I'm scared of seeing the truth." And I feel like sometimes people don't want to look within because it can be scary.
Mhm.
Why it's called shadow work, because those are the dark places no one wants to go, and it
Mhm.
is scary. And it's the insecurities, it's the trauma, it's the stuff that happened and
Mhm.
that we never processed and dealt with. So it's not an easy cup of tea to drink. it's
No.
it's
No.
definitely hard work. That's why I feel like it's called, people like, oh, it's doing the work. Yeah, because it's hard.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
really doing the work. So, and I think for every single person, there comes a moment in your life where you make that decision. And when that time happens, it's different for every single person. But I
Mhm.
think, there's a moment where sometimes you look and you're like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't live with myself. And that's when sometimes it's those rock bottom moments that really push you to be like, okay, like something's got to change, and it's got to be me. And then that, creates that starts that journey of looking inward.
It reminds me and makes me reflect on the whole lesson of everything happens for a reason. Like we're put into a certain place at a certain time
Yeah,
for a reason. We're here on this earth for a reason, and so expanding on that is also something that kind of plays in the back of my mind, like because everyone's going through something for sure.
absolutely. Yeah. And it gives you meaning to some of those experiences that might not be so great, because we
Mhm.
all go through things, and that's something that you one day realize is like, oh, I know I've went through a lot of stuff, but so is her, and so is she,
Yeah.
and so is he, and so is everyone. We all kind of go through those things, but it's the story that you create, the meaning that you create around it, that like is what really differentiates people, because you'll see people that are writing books or like whatever, empowered people. They're really looking at their story and they're talking about it in a way that it changed them positively, and it taught them perseverance, or it
Mhm.
taught them strength, or it taught them or showed them a new side to themselves that they didn't know existed. And so it's that moment where you change the story, and it's not something that happened to you and you're a victim of it, but how this story shaped you and how it helped you become who you are today.
Yes, I completely agree. What do you think the biggest misconceptions are when it comes to astrology and moon rituals?
Yeah. So it's funny. I think a lot of people's first impression of astrology, and even my own when I was like 12 years old, was horoscopes. You'd open the little magazines or you'd go to the online databases and you're like, what's my horoscope? And that's, I feel
Yes.
like, everyone's first taste of astrology, but it sucks. And I think that's why astrology gets a really bad rap, because I mean, even I used to, at like 12 years old, take the early morning school bus to get to the computer room so that I could check my horoscope for the day. And then literally at 12, I was doing this like every single day for months and months and months. And I was like, wait, I think this is addictive. I need to stop doing this. And so I was like, I'm never going to look at astrology again. And it's funny to have that, like, funny little insightful wisdom at that time. But I think that's where people can have like a misconception on, like, oh,
Mm,
it's telling you how to feel, and it's
yeah.
telling you, it's predictive, like in a way of, it's going to tell you how your day is going to go or whatever else. And I think that is not the most useful use of astrology. I think, to me, astrology, where the most benefit comes, is from understanding patterns and understanding personalities and understanding yourself. And because in that moment, in that snapshot, you have these planets interplaying in a very specific flavor, in a very specific way, that create sort of different tensions that might live within you, different
Mhm.
tensions and different strengths. And when you understand that, you can play with it. You're like, okay, well, this is a strength, actually. And it might be something that you never really realized about yourself. So you're like, okay, now that I see that and I know that lives within me, let me double down on it. And if you see a specific strength, a specific tension, you can say, okay, well, I know that lives inside of me. How can I work with it? Maybe it might be a little bit harder for me, but how can I work with that energy? So I don't see it ever as a final prescription, because two people can have the exact same chart, but they can be very different people.
Mm,
And it's because of how you work with your chart and how you work with those energies. And of course, there's nature and nurture and all of those things. But as you grow into adult, like, you have choice and you have free will. And so I think the most benefit is in that, is understanding sort of more like your psychology behind things.
It's interesting too because was just like you when I was growing up as well. Felt like every day on my birthday, I had to go to the newspaper and check what my horoscope said and then see if I kind of resonated with it. But to your point, it's like them telling you something, not necessarily aligning with how you are, what's shaping you within
Yes.
that specific
Yeah.
day,
Yeah. And I hated that. I was like, don't, after a while, I was like, don't tell me how to have my day.
right?
You don't tell me. I decide.
Exactly how it is.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I feel like, it's not useful. But of course, like, people, there's an addictive quality to it, because what people, want is certainty. Tell me what's
Mhm.
going to happen. Tell me everything's going to be okay. And so, like, it's nice in that way, because it feeds that need for certainty.
Yeah.
But and I think that's why it gets popular, and that's why it's like,
Uh, yeah.
viral and all of those things. But I don't think that that's actually like the best way to use it.
No, no, it's really not. What fascinates me too is that you are a breathwork facilitator. I love breathwork.
Yeah.
Um, how do you find that breathwork and moon journaling complement each other?
So, breathwork was one of the first things that I actually got certified in. Absolutely love it. And
Mm,
for anyone that doesn't know anything about breathwork, it's a really interesting practice where you can go sort of into a different state in your body through breath. And when you're in that state, sometimes physically, you can start to feel different sensations, tingling and attention in your hands and your feet. But what's really happening on a more energetic level is emotions and things that you may not have processed are really coming to the surface,
mm,
to be released and to be let go. So I found it to be really useful then in shadow work. So that's where I love using that tool, where I'm like, okay, I've got some deep stuff. Or sometimes, when you go through something that's really sad or really heartbreaking, but you don't really feel, you're not crying and you're not sad, and you can feel a little bit stoic about it. It helps you connect to that place inside to process it, so that you're not carrying it, because if you don't actually deal with some of those things, and again, it's that, like, looking inward thing. If you don't
mhm.
deal with it, you're sort of carrying it. So I love using it for shadow work.
I've noticed that within myself too. There's things that I find someone tells me something that's like really traumatic or anything, I feel like I carry it for them. And what breath work does, it really helps me release that everything that I am carrying, and like, get me to a place of centering myself. So I agree in that alignment is definitely
So
key for
needed.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, that book, The Body Keeps Score. It's such an interesting book
Mm,
about how, things, whether it's words, whether it's experiences, and whether it's even things that we see, news and things that we see in the world, like how really that can impact us. And we can, especially, I feel like a lot of people that might be listening to this, they might resonate with feeling, being really empathetic and really understanding. And the thing with being really empathetic is you can not just feel empathy for someone, but you can also start to carry, like you said, carry other people's pain.
yeah.
And when you don't have that clear way of either protecting yourself energetically or releasing it, you might start to, like, over time be like, why am nothing's bad in my life? Why am I feeling so sad? Why am I feeling so down? And it's just because you're carrying all of this negative stuff.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting to me is where people then turn to drugs or, other forms of prescriptions to really help relieve their pain. But it's, it's beyond that. You know what I mean? There's this holistic practice that I feel a lot of people forget. And it's the understanding of that. And the more you know about that, the more that it can be more healing than the addiction that you might get from medication.
Absolutely. And the way that I am and how I am today is not because of like beautiful things that's like lightly carried me into spirituality and breath work and all of this stuff, but it was through that contrast. It was through those getting experiences. I had my own period of time where I was absolutely turning to alcohol for
Mm,
some of those darker traumatic things, and it was a long time of emotionally numbing. So when someone says they don't want to look inside,
yeah.
I know that feeling personally, because that was me for so many years. And it was that, that rock bottom moment that made me go, well, I can't do this anymore. Like something has to change. And it's funny because all of that led me to changing my environment many times, where I was like, okay, you know what? It's these people, and it's this city, and
Mm,
it's this. And so I think it was, when I was 24 years old, I quit my job and left Chicago and people and boyfriend and all these things. And I moved to Spain. And I was like, when I move to Spain, it's going to solve all my problems and everything's going to be great. And I
yeah.
went there, and after a year, at first it was great and it was shiny and it was new and it was fun. And then a year later, I found myself having the same struggles and having struggles in relationships and feeling really down and bad. And it was like, well, I changed everything. How come I don't feel any different? And then that's when I had that awakening moment where I was like, oh, I didn't change myself. I still took myself with me. And so that was the first time where I was like, clearly the common denominator is me. And so I need to change, and I need to look within and like what's inside of here that actually needs to be addressed. And so yeah, definitely. I totally resonate with that emotion and that feeling.
Has there been anything has surprised you in your journey through moon journaling?
Um, that surprised me in my journey of moon journaling. Honestly, I think one of my favorite things is just that, like, sometimes I've been doing this for a while, so like sometimes I'm like, okay, well, I don't think anything's gonna come up, like because you're after you've been doing something and you're like, oh, I'm so self-aware now, like I know everything,
Yeah.
like I don't think anything's gonna come up. So actually, even this, we just had a full moon on Tuesday, and it's a full moon in Virgo, and that full moon is all about systems and structure. And sometimes Virgo can be really like self-improvement based and refinement and all of these things. And I was like, okay, so pulled out my journal, and I was journaling on some things. And sometimes I'll start it, but I won't finish it because I actually want some time to like sit with the prompts and like think about it. So
Mhm.
I'd done half of it and I was like, okay, I'll come back to it tomorrow. And in between that time, you know, I was still like sort of like having that like run in the back of my head. And I was like, oh, wait, actually, I just noticed something. And, you know, it was that, so one thing, you know, we're always learning and growing. And one thing that I noticed was it was just this random situation. And I was in this conversation in my head, the
Mhm.
dialogue that I was having, not that this is good, but I was having this dialogue and I was like, oh my gosh, this person, they were just frustrating me. And I was like, oh, they're so dumb. Like, how could they not know this? Like, you know, we are in a very professional setting and like, this person is 10 years my senior. And I'm like, how could they not know this at this point, like in their career? And I was like, I had this whole dialogue in my head. And obviously I wasn't saying anything. But then later, I was reflecting and I was like, you know, I'm really judgmental about myself when it comes to things. I was having this like little moment where I was comparing myself a lot to different business owners and things, and I was thinking like I was really far behind. And the dialogue that I had in my head was, "You're just not smart enough. That's why you can't figure it out. You're just not." And it was the same judgment that I had to her, but I was having with myself of "you're not
Mhm.
smart enough." And that reminded me, you know, any judgment that we pass on anybody else, it's because we're our harshest critic and we're judging ourselves quietly in that way. And so becoming self-aware in that when, you know, because I was like, okay, what's coming up? What are the patterns? What are the triggers? And so I realized like, oh, wait, that's something that my inner voice is doing about me. And if I stopped being like less harsh with myself, maybe I'd be less harsh with other people and I would have more understanding and empathy. So it always surprises me that, you know, some things can still come up even doing it for so long.
But the understanding of how to kind of look within
Yeah.
as you've done, and
Yeah.
to understand the intentionally understand what's happening, and
Yeah.
then, you know,
If
play
you're
it
doing
out.
it, it becomes a practice and you just
Yeah.
like start doing it and you understand it in a more deeper way. So even when you start, you might not notice. Sometimes I feel
Mhm.
like all of the patterns and the triggers and whatever, but then because you do it and you continuously do it, then it starts becoming just like a more way of living, you know?
It's all about that practice. And for you, what keeps you grounded as this community around your work continues to grow?
Honestly, the biggest thing is I would say too. I am really big on meditation.
Mm.
I feel like I need that time and that connection to myself and journaling. Even outside of moon journaling, I'm a really big journaler, and I've been journaling for like 10 years. I have so many journals like all filled up and all for different things. I have like, you know, a different journal for this and for that and whatever. So I just feel like that helps me really process things because sometimes when you force yourself to sit there and write things out, you start to see information that comes out in a way that maybe you were avoiding in a way and like or
Mhm.
didn't know how to verbalize and didn't really know like how to take it. So sometimes when you're just like free writing, that's where all of that like goodness starts coming in. So journaling and meditation really just help ground me in daily life.
It's something I try to do more frequently than I used to be such a good journaler, especially when it came to, like, gratitude, like,
Yeah.
I would watch Oprah when I was growing up, like, religiously, right? And she would always do a gratitude journal and write 5 things that you're grateful for, and so I continued that, and then you fall off, but then you try to pick yourself back up and kind of go about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
It
yeah.
happens all the time, like, you know, falling off of a thing or whatever, and then you just I don't even call it falling off, like, I feel like it's just, you know, flowing through different tools and different things that might
Mhm.
be resonating with you at the time, you know? So, yeah. Totally.
Exactly. Yes. For someone who feels disconnected from themselves or overwhelmed by life, where is the best place to start?
Honestly, I think any practice of journaling would be super helpful in
Mhm.
writing out those things that you might be feeling overwhelmed with. It's a really great tool in just self-soothing, self-understanding, getting yourself to feeling a little bit more compassion and empathy for yourself, because you're writing, you can maybe start to write all these things and then start to be like, well, why am I being so mean to myself? I need to be a little bit nicer. So again, it's that mirror moment. So I think journaling is a great tool that I feel like if you're thinking about, wanting to start to go within a little bit and reflect, I think that one is a great one to start with. And you don't need anything. You just need an empty notebook, paper, anything that you want to write
I'm
in.
so for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If someone is trying to start their moon journaling tonight, what is the first question they should be asking themselves?
Yeah. So if you want to get started with moon journaling, you start on either new moons and full moons.
Mm.
So moon journaling is a practice that you write in twice a month on those new moons, full moons. I think the next new moon is March 18th. We have the astrological new year on March 21st. So it's a great time to start because it'll be, for the new year and whatnot. But on those new moons, really, you want to think about, just to simplify it, you want to think about what you want to call in, things that you want, that you're desiring. And I know it can feel a little bit repetitive, but it should feel repetitive where every new moon, you're either rewriting those things or clarifying those things, because you want to continue nurturing those seeds and take it a step further by not just nurturing and writing them intentionally, but then looking at, okay, what are the commitments? I always like to call them
Mhm.
commitments in the moon journal, is
Mhm.
what are the commitments that you're going to make to bring that into life, into reality, because you have to take action also. And then on full moons, it's about noticing what's coming up. What are the things that are triggering you? What are the obstacles that you're facing? Maybe you had a difficult conversation with a friend. Maybe you're avoiding a difficult conversation with someone. So just reflecting on some of those more difficult things that you might be seeing. And that's a great place to start.
Yeah, that and make it change the way that you go about your life too
Yeah,
through the practice.
absolutely.
What does living a guided within life look like for you today?
So honestly, the name and the sort of mission behind it is understanding and remembering that the most important guidance, the most important steps for your path will always come from within.
Mm.
It's not outside of you. There's no one out there that knows the answer for you. There is no horoscope out there that knows what for you what to do tomorrow. There isn't. And there's no person power. There's just no power outside of you. It always lies within you. And um and then that's where my mission comes, of creating tools that help people bring them back to themselves and their center.
Mm.
So I think that a guided within life just looks like, building that self-trust, building that connection with yourself, so that you can walk through life feeling really confident, really assured, and have belief in your ideas and your dreams.
And where can people get a copy of moon journaling?
You can get one at themoonjournal.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you for bringing so much spiritual awakening to this conversation. Completely enjoyed talking with you today.
Me too. Thank you for having me. Absolutely loved our chat today. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to me on Instagram. I am guided within, and happy to be here.
Thank you so much. One thing I took away from this episode is the power of slowing down and actually listening to ourselves. Well, tune in next time for another meaningful conversation. Until then, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and like this episode. And I'll see you again. Take care.